Right.
I'm here with an exceptional coach and educator, David Macaulty. David, I don't think I'm even qualified to run down your list of qualifications, but first, how does it feel to be here?
It feels really good, especially since I'm retired
Yeah, right,
and
right.
I can just enjoy everything.
Yeah, that's great. Can you just quickly run down the short list of what you consider your most, your biggest achievements
Wow.
as a
That's
as a chess coach and chess
right,
enthusiast?
right. I think um, I think my biggest achievement was recognizing that what chess was going to do for children emotionally was far more important than what it was going to do for them academically.
Ah,
I think that's the biggest realization that I came to, and the thing that I have been championing throughout my career
wow.
is,
Uh,
is how chess helps children with their emotional development.
right. And I guess we can dig right into it. When did you come to that realization?
Um, in about After I'd been teaching for maybe about 6 or 8 weeks, and I was dealing with children in the South Bronx who didn't have any acclimation to games or how you get along with one another in a conflict situation.
Right.
And one of the children who was on the chess team, and therefore better than most of the classmates, took his opponent's queen. His opponent, being a total beginner, simply reached across the board and grabbed his queen. And I said, wait, 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 what are you doing? And he said, well, he took my queen, so I took his. I said,
That's
I
amazing.
said, look, this is not the street. This is not how we're going to do things here. There
Right.
are rules. Now, it took me a long time to convince this child that there were rules that had to be followed,
Right.
and that you couldn't just do what you do on the street with somebody that offends you or does something you don't like. And that was the first moment that I realized I'm having an impact on how these children deal with one another. And that one moment became sort of the catalyst for a whole stream of other insights in similar situations where someone was using street behavior in chess. And my job was to get them out of that and to help them understand that those rules really aren't very effective when you're trying to be um, when you're trying to be a working member of a society.
Right. Right. And is this at CES 70, the inner city
Yes, it was.
New York
Yeah,
City school?
right,
Okay,
right. It was up in the Bronx.
we might as
Right.
well start there about how you started working in the Bronx, because that's really fascinating, and I find it very interesting that before we get to that, actually, I'd like to say that I find it interesting that you chose that achievement over, say, like any of the national championships that your teams won.
Um, those things are nice. The movie was nice. All these things are nice.
Yeah.
But seeing how you've changed a child's life is very, very different.
Mm,
There's no comparison.
that's incredible. So okay, so then how did you start working in the Bronx?
Uh, as with most of my life, it was complete accident and serendipitous. Bruce Pandolfini had long been a friend of mine, and one day he couldn't get to a chess class, and he asked me to take it over for him. And I said, "You're out of your mind. You guys are all masters. I'm just a guy who likes to play chess." And he convinced me that he was absolutely desperate. None of his friends could do it. They were all tied up with something. I had to do it. And so he showed me a couple of ideas, and I went in and I taught these third graders, and it was fun. I really had a wonderful time doing it. And then he asked me to do it again a little later.
Right.
And then I was working in real estate at the time as a building manager. and not enjoying it very much. And one day he said, "How would you like to stop doing that and come work for me teaching chess to inner city children?" And it's a little more complicated than what I'm saying right now, but
Yeah.
that's the basic gist of it.
Right.
And so I started working for what was then called the Manhattan Chess Club School, which
Okay.
has later become the Chess in the Schools program.
Okay. So Chess in the
It
Schools
morphed into
program
that
that
later.
still exists today, correct?
Right. Oh, absolutely. And
Yeah.
it's terrific. But back then, it was the Manhattan Chess Club School
Hmm.
under the umbrella of the American Chess Foundation.
Okay.
And so I went to work for them. And at the time, then we would go into a school for 4 to 6 weeks, teach the children the moves and rules, leave them with some books and some sets, and then go on to another school. And at the end of 6 weeks, I thought, I have not taught these children how to play chess.
Right. Right.
Um, this wasn't working.
Yeah.
The program has since been upgraded tremendously, and it's very successful and well run, and it's beautiful. But back then, in the early days, we were still figuring things out, and we didn't figure it out properly in the beginning. But one of the schools that I was assigned to was CES 70 in the Bronx, and IBM had pumped a little extra money into that district that year, so I could go to them not just for 6 weeks, but every week. So I went to them once a week, and at the end of that time, we went to the national tournament, where our kids amazingly placed, I think, something like 13th in the under section, under 1,000.
Okay.
But we won a trophy at the national tournament. The kids, from the way the kids were jumping up and down, you would have thought we had won.
Right.
When I came back at the end of the year, at the end of the tournament, Sylvia Simon, the principal, who was just an absolute gift to education, she pulled me into her office and she said, "I like the way you work with our kids. How would you like to quit the foundation and come get certified as a teacher and teach chess in my school?"
Wow.
So that was how I became a chess teacher
Wow.
in the Bronx. And there was another teacher in the area who was teaching chess, but she wasn't hired as a full-time chess teacher. So I was the first person to actually be hired to do nothing but teach chess
Right.
in the public schools in New York.
So in the
And it
all
was
of New
wonderful.
York, all of New York City. No, there
All
were
of
no
New-
other
right, yes.
full-time chess teachers.
No, no,
Um,
not Board of Ed.
you may or may not know, but did she come up against any resistance from any administrators or the city or anything like that?
Yeah, actually, that's kind of a funny story that I didn't learn until much later. She wanted to hire me, but there's a seniority system for hiring teachers. And so she wanted to hire me, and there was this big list of other teachers that were qualified. And she said, "Okay, what area do you not have somebody qualified in?" And they said, "Well, we don't have anybody who teaches drama." And she said, "Fine, I want somebody to teach drama. I'm going to get David to teach drama." Now, I didn't realize that until many years later, that's how she finagled the system.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
but but the funny thing about that is that actually drama was my first official major.
Oh, right.
That didn't work, and I was a professional actor for 10 years.
Wow.
So it actually would have fit.
Wow.
But that's how I became a chess teacher.
Wait, but she didn't tell you that you were like the official drama teacher.
No, no. My job was to teach critical thinking,
I
and
see.
chess was the vehicle.
Right. That's incredible. Okay, I have to put a pin real quick, and we go straight to that. You have a professional background in acting.
Yes.
I mean, it seems like you've lived quite a life. You've already mentioned 3 careers in the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes of this interview. So, but I am super interested in the becoming a professional actor. What kind of stuff did you do?
I did regional theaters. I worked at the McCarter Theater. I worked at Actors Theater in Louisville. I did a lot of off Broadway shows in New York, and off Broadway. One night on Broadway. It was terrible.
Yeah. This. What time period was this?
This would have been 73 through about 81, 82.
So yeah, so the 70s.
Yes.
I mean, this was the heyday of drama
Oh, it was wonderful.
in the United States,
It,
in theater
it
in the
was
United
very,
States.
it was very exciting. Yes.
Um, I have to ask, did you play chess at all during that time?
I've played chess all my life,
Okay,
but I never took it seriously until
right,
Bruce asked me to start teaching.
right,
I mean,
okay,
I, my father was a fairly strong chess player by amateur standards. He was probably, expert level. And the conversation in our house, now we're going back to the 1950s,
right.
the conversation in our house frequently involved people like Tal and Botvinnik.
Wow.
And I had Lasker's Manual of Chess, which I studied in high school. And, I wasn't a complete idiot,
Right,
but I was no master.
right.
I've always played, I've always had fun, I've always enjoyed it, but I didn't start really studying it until I realized I was going to be a chess teacher.
Okay,
And then
okay.
I
That's
started
super interesting.
devouring, I
But
started
along with the,
devouring this.
oh, sorry, say that again.
I started devouring chess books. I
Okay.
read Stetkov on endings, Rubinstein's games, Marshall's games,
Mhm.
Morphy's games.
Mhm.
Uh,
Okay, so real quick before we get back to that,
yes.
did you, as a professional actor, did you apply any of the skills that you learned through chess to acting?
Um, wow, that's interesting. Um, Probably.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how it works.
Right.
Um, Actually, I applied more of my acting skills as a teacher.
Huh? Yeah. Right. Right.
Um, so it actually went more the other way as a teacher.
I see. Yeah, I was wondering that if your professional background as an actor made it easy to step in, because most people don't say, "I just stepped into a third grade class and it was fun."
Oh, well, I had I had performed for audiences up to 1,000.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So to have 30 third graders
Uh,
um, with a actually and there was a teacher in the room keeping order. So I didn't have to
okay.
worry about any of the classroom management
Okay.
skills. I didn't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Got it.
I was just going to teach chess,
I see.
and there were none of those side issues which come to dominate your life if you're a real teacher.
Right. Right. Okay. We're having some.
But since there was a teacher in the classroom, I didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Hold on one second. We're having
And I saw that it froze there.
some connection issues. Yeah. It's okay. It's good now. Looks like.
Hmm.
Um, okay. So we'll start. We'll go back there. Um, So one question I have first, though: who's a tougher critic,
Yeah.
the kids or the adults in the theater setting, or the audience in the theater setting?
That's funny. We have a saying in theater: the best audience gets the best show.
Yeah.
Um, and it's your job to make every audience the best audience.
Right. Right. Okay.
So, when you're in front of the kids, um, well, that's such a different set of issues,
Right.
because it depends on which kids. Some are just absolutely amazing. Some of them come from very dysfunctional backgrounds, and the classroom management issues are so demanding.
Hmm.
Uh, when I taught in the Bronx, after two classes, I felt like I was a dish rag that a steamroller had just run over.
Hmm. Hmm.
When I was teaching at Dalton, um, the roughest problem you're going to have is a kid who likes to call out.
Right. Right.
That's not exactly a difficult situation.
That's right.
So, so I would end up, when I was teaching in the private school, at the end of the day, I felt as fresh as when I started.
Hmm.
The Bronx, it's a lot more work,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Um,
I have to say, much as I loved all the kids, um, there's nothing as rewarding as the work that I did in the Bronx. That was really, I have to say, that was really the high point of my sense of accomplishment as a human being.
right. I understand that. And let's talk about the atmosphere in the Bronx at the time. So,
Yes.
what were the neighborhoods like? What was the background? I do believe. What year was this again that you started?
I started around 91
Okay,
and went through the year 2000 in the Bronx.
so this is basically like
Um,
the epidemic is just tailing off, but it's still the gangs in New York City are
it was
still
still
pretty.
there. It was still there.
It was still there.
It was
Okay,
still there.
yeah.
Yeah. My school straddled the two highest crime precincts in the Bronx.
Okay,
It's the highest rate of STDs in the country.
man,
In that area. It's the highest poverty rate in the United States.
man.
I mean, even Appalachia. Um, and so we had a lot of crime. There were gangs.
Hmm.
There were I mean, just about every socioeconomic and cultural and racial issue is going in the wrong direction.
Man, that's
Um,
tough.
it is, but that being said, there were some amazing parents there. Some of my colleagues at the school were just astonishing,
Yeah,
and the principal, Sylvia Simon, is God's gift to education.
that's fantastic.
She really was. Um, but the thing is that when you have that kind of generational poverty
Yeah,
and all the anxieties and all the troubles and all the problems that go with that,
right.
um, it's really too much to ask a school to overcome all of those things for the children.
Right. Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is that these kids are coming in with major psychological issues. Is that correct?
Um, I would say yes and no. There are many problems there,
Hmm.
but I wouldn't want to paint the whole group with a big broad brush of
I
any
see.
sort.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but there was a study done back in the 1990s, I believe, called the 30 million word study,
Hmm.
where these interviewers went into different socioeconomic levels and discovered that children in poverty hear approximately 30 million fewer words
Wow.
by the time they enter kindergarten.
Wow.
Uh, That's the neurological processing of language that they don't have.
Hmm.
There was another study. That study, by the way, has been re-examined and modified and tweaked a little bit. But the basic fact is, children in poverty don't hear as many words.
Right.
They don't navigate language as frequently, and a lot of what they do hear is very negative and harsh.
Right.
Um, now that's not to say all of them,
Yeah, yeah. Well, you,
but
you said it's a very diverse school,
very,
so
very, very diverse,
there's going to
very
be lots
diverse.
of backgrounds. I understand that,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
good families too.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely. But the other study that went parallel to this was how often are children read to,
mm,
and this one study concluded that in approximately a fourth of households, the children are not read to at all.
man.
That's all households. So you can imagine that in a poverty area, that would be exacerbated. So when you're teaching in those areas, there's a lot to overcome. They don't walk into school thoroughly prepared to be a good student.
Right. Right. I just thought about this on the fly, but would you say that because of some of those deficiencies, chess is actually not as challenging as other subjects because chess has a very limited language, right? It's just a few symbols and characters, and then you can understand it as far as you understand the pieces move, of course. Um,
Right.
I'm wondering if that's a factor in how kids take up chess.
It is. And I would actually go, I would like to go in a slightly different direction on that.
Sure.
With the terrible deficits in language processing that I've just mentioned,
Yeah.
chess has the ability to overcome those deficits
Right.
because the thought processes that you're going through in chess are going to tweak every part of the brain.
Right.
Literally every part of the brain is activated. And because it's so exciting, they want to do it more and more and more.
Yeah.
So so you end up with this acceleration of cerebral firings. And I think it goes a long way to overcoming some of the deficits that they walk into the room with.
Wow. I mean,
And
that's
I wish more educators would get onto this, and I wish some neurologists would pursue this further
right.
and find out, find out if what I'm saying anecdotally is actually verified by science.
Right.
I I think it will be if
Right.
anybody ever.
It's a strong hypothesis, and if it's true, then it says something powerful about the game of chess. Um,
Yes. Well, there's no doubt about the um, the efficacy of chess in a school setting.
right.
Just over and over again, we've seen it literally transforms children. And what I was saying earlier about their emotional development, one of the things that is crucial for doing anything successfully is believing that you can.
Yeah.
If you don't believe you can, why are you going to bother?
Yeah.
But with chess, we can program learning chess so that when they learn one thing really well, they think, "Hey, I did that.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do the next one." And when they do the next one, they think, "Wow, this is cool." And then they do the next one and the next one and the next one. And pretty soon, they've got a vast body of information that they can rely on to be consistent every single time. Now, that's another very important thing because a lot of the stuff that happens in these inner city areas um, is that many things that go on depend on somebody else's mood. They
Yeah.
depend on somebody else's behavior.
Right.
Chess doesn't. The knight's going to move up two and over one, whether you had a good day or a bad day. The
Right.
king has to escape from check no matter what anybody said to you before this.
Right.
These are things that you can count on. And that is crucial for people who live with a bit of chaos in their lives.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a game of perfect information. How does
Yes,
how does that game of perfect information get applied to real life?
over and over and over.
Right.
I had kids drawing analogies all the time. Um, there was one very funny moment in a kindergarten class. I was teaching the ladder checkmate with two rooks, and so the first thing I did was I put the king on one side of the board and the two rooks on the other side, so the king couldn't possibly get to the rooks. Then I changed it, and I got the king closer. And as he moves down diagonally towards the rook has to run to the other side of the board. One of the kindergartners says, "That rook is a coward." And I said, "Oh, well, let me ask you now, if you're crossing the street and a car is coming, are you going to be brave and stand there?
Right.
Or are you going to be smart and get out of the way?"
Right. uh,
So, there are opportunities like that all the time in the classroom. And, the teacher really has to be alert for these teachable moments.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
then I would have children say, I had one fifth grader once talking about one of his friends who had joined a gang. And he said, "That's a bad move."
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
uh,
but, I could cite dozens of stories of kids telling me how chess kept them from getting into a problem
yeah.
because
Uh,
they could see it ahead of time. They could see it coming.
I guess that begs the question. Then, have you kept in contact with any of your students throughout the years?
Oh, yes. I've got the most ridiculous Facebook for an elderly white man.
That's a good point. That's super fun. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's right. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So one big question that I have here is, especially with your curriculum, you said
Yes,
that when you first went in the classroom, even working with Bruce and the Manhattan Chess Club, well, it's
that's not cool.
the Manhattan Chess Club School.
Right.
Your curriculum was not fully formed, and it took time to develop. Um,
Absolutely.
and
Yes.
I mean, by the time I started coaching in the 2010s, it was there was a beautiful framework for me, and I was able to just apply it and run with it.
Abs-
Um,
Absolutely.
so
Yes.
can you talk about from the very beginning where you guys were stumbling through, and then go through to once you guys established a really strong curriculum?
Yes. Okay. Well, two things that I should mention here. One was my big breakthrough in working with the kids. Um, I was teaching. I just started teaching the kids, and this was early in my career. My first year, I was only teaching a class every 2 weeks,
Okay.
and only for 20 minutes.
Right.
Now that's not a lot of time,
Right.
and there's a lot of fall off in between. So I was teaching one piece a week. So at the end of 6 weeks, or the end of 12 weeks, since I was seeing them every 2 weeks, we now learned all the pieces. And I said, okay, now let's set the board up. So I hung up my demonstration board and I held up the rook. I said, what's this? And they all hollered out that it was a rook, and they were just excited and jumping up and down, and it was worth 5 points. I said, terrific. The rook begins the game in the corner. Who can come up and put this rook in the corner for me? Nobody moved. Yeah. Second grade class. Nobody moved. They did not have a working definition of the word corner.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh
blew
my
me away.
gosh.
Yes. Now, I taught 5 second grade classes that day, 30 kids in a class. That's 150 kids. I did the same experiment in all 5 classes just to find out, is this really true? These children do not know the word corner. The
Wow.
closest I got was when one little girl in the first class asked me if the corner was like a store.
Ah.
And I said, yes. Your mother says she's going to go to the corner store to get a quart of milk. So
Right.
this was before smartboards. This was chalkboards.
Right.
So I quickly drew an intersection on the chalkboard and put a little building on the corner. And I said, here's the store. It's on the corner of where these roads cross.
Right.
And so I realized then that I've got to go back and start totally differently. And I had a mentor at the time, a phenomenal teacher named Eric Whitney, and he was the UFT representative, and he was constantly drilling my head into a post, saying, "You can't do it that way. You can't do it that way." And I kept saying, "But." We argued all the time, and he was always right.
Right.
But one of the things that he stressed was, you can't begin with what you think they need to know. You have to begin with where they are.
Yeah.
So I changed my system, and that was when I devised the idea of beginning with a straight line. What is a straight line?
Mm.
Because the chessboard is a straight line, is made up of straight lines. Squares are
Yeah.
straight lines.
Yeah.
All the pieces move in straight lines. Even the knight moves in 2 straight lines. So I changed my format completely to what is a straight line, what happens when you have a horizontal line and a vertical line coming together. You have a right angle. It's called a right angle not because it goes to the right, but because it's the correct angle to use when you're making a square or a rectangle.
Mm-hmm.
So I devised a whole series of lessons just on that.
Wow.
And then I discovered that in a kindergarten class, if I began that way, at the end of the very first class, they knew the alphanumeric grid of the chessboard. They knew they had a concept of what a pattern is.
Right.
Light, dark, light, dark, light, dark.
Right.
Diagonal, vertical, horizontal, rank, file, diagonal. And so now we have a shared terminology.
Right.
Now I've got words that I can use, and they're all going to relate to the same words in the same way that everybody else in the class is going to do. So I'm overcoming the 30 million word study problem.
Right.
Now, the other thing that was to my advantage was that I didn't mention this earlier, but my first language was music. Both my parents were professional musicians. My brother was the tuba player for the St. Louis Symphony, and I was a musician in the Navy and in high school. Oops, you suddenly disappeared.
I'm here.
Okay, I'm seeing a zoom. Do you still see me?
I do still see you, so you're still on the call.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can go ahead and find the window and pop it back up if you want to see me.
I don't know. Is it this thing? I don't know.
If you look at the bottom on the toolbar, if you look at the zoom thing, there should be, click on it. There should be 2 things that'll show you.
This is weird. I don't see anything here. Oh my God. I'm getting all kinds of stuff showing up. I'm not going to try to fix this.
No
Are you
worries.
getting? You're seeing me right now?
Yeah, yeah, it's fine on my
Okay,
end.
fine.
I just feel
Okay,
bad that you
okay.
can't see me now.
No, I can't. You're gone. You're gone. I have no idea why. Um,
I mean, we could just rejoin. You could rejoin the meeting if you want to.
um, let me see. This is really weird.
It's technology.
Uh,
No worries.
okay, I'm gonna try something, and I may end up disappearing.
Yeah, no problem.
Um,
Yeah, worst case scenario, you can always click back on the link and start over.
Oops, I think I have to do that. Okay, here we are.
Oh, you're back.
Okay, I don't know what I did, but
So you were explaining the
yeah,
how to teach the chessboard itself, right?
right, right,
Yeah.
right. But that was the beginning lesson, and after they learn the board, then they can learn how the pieces move on that board.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the field, then it's hard to understand everything else.
Right.
And the fact that we can now name every square at the end of the first meeting is really very, very helpful.
Yeah. Right.
So now, and since we began with straight lines, I can now show how the rook moves in two straight lines,
Mm-hmm.
ranks and files.
Right.
And the bishop moves in one straight line, diagonals. And the queen moves in three straight lines. And the
Right.
king moves in straight lines, but it's only one square at a time.
Right.
So, um, so, but the other thing that really helped me as a chess teacher, where there was no curriculum, was my music background.
Ah.
Because as a musician, you learn things in a very specific order, and they build on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, for example, the first thing you learn is rhythm.
Right.
You learn how to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
Right. Then it gets more
You
complicated.
learn, yeah, and then you learn all kinds of things about rhythm, and then you start learning about individual notes and how you can relate one note to another. This one is the second. This one is the third. This one is the fourth. This one is the fifth. This one is the sixth, the seventh, and eighth. You just learn one thing after another in a logical sequence.
Right.
And so I thought, okay, let me apply that to teaching chess. So first we learn the board, then we're going to learn the rook because that's the easiest piece to move. Then we're going to learn the king because that's also a really super easy piece to move, just one square, unless there's a rook saying, no, you can't go here. So now we're learning exceptions.
Yeah. Right.
And then we're learning the goal of the game is to catch the king, and we can do that with two rooks.
Right.
And then we've got this other set of straight lines that we haven't done anything with yet, the diagonal. Well, there's a piece that just does diagonals, and that's the bishop. And then there's a piece that does what the rook and the bishop do, and that's the queen. And the king does the same thing the queen does, it's just that he has to stop after one move.
I feel like I'm becoming a much better coach just listening to you talk.
No, but,
Especially for the
a lot of
elementary age.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
yeah. A lot of people like to start with a pawn. I save the pawn for last. That's the most complicated piece on the board.
Interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
No, I mean it's got all these different rules. It's
Right.
the only one that changes things. It's
Right.
the only one that doesn't capture the same way it moves. I mean it's
It's a complex piece. Yeah.
can't go backwards.
Yeah.
What's up with that? I mean,
Yeah.
So anyway, and then having done that and learning checkmate, then we start learning different ways that you can attack something.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a chess master named Bruce Alberston who came up with a brilliant idea called the monster piece, where you would put a rook on A1 and a white rook on A1 and a black pawn on A4 and another black pawn on C4 and another black pawn on C7 and another black pawn on F7 and another black pawn on C5. And the rook can capture each one
Yeah.
at a time. It's like Pac-Man.
Right.
And the beautiful thing about this is that you get a reward on every move. And another great thing is you can't lose. Nobody's taking your piece.
Right. Right.
So the kids are learning how to move a piece. At the same time, they're learning a logical progression of things.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can say things like, you can set up a pattern with like 6 pawns that it can capture and say, okay, without touching any of the pieces, what is the 5th one that the rook is going to capture? And now the kids have to do that in their head. They have to follow that pattern in their head and get to the fifth one.
Right.
So you can structure these lessons in a way that are that's fun for the kids and very educational and very useful.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and you're building
career,
up these skills.
yes, you're
Well, some
building up
skills
the
they don't
skills.
even know they're learning, like visualization.
Exactly. Yes, precisely. Um, so that was how I developed my curriculum.
Wow, that's really interesting. And how much trial and error was involved?
Oh, I gave a talk once. I gave a training program once to a bunch of chess teachers, and I was telling all these stories about what works and how to do these things. And during the Q&A, this one guy said, "So, Mr. Macaulty, did you ever make any mistakes?" And I said, "How much time have we got?"
Right, right, right.
Now, the trial and error is horrible. The learning curve when you're a beginning teacher is tremendous, especially in an area where there was no curriculum.
Right. It's a totally new subject, basically,
No, no. But
for school.
one of the requirements of being a teacher is that you have to take education courses and
Hmm.
get certified. So I ended up taking all these courses in curriculum development and classroom management, and I was going crazy for these things, and they were all taught by UFT teachers.
Yeah,
These weren't taught by professors who had gone to high school, gone to college, gone to grad school, gotten their PhDs, but had never stepped foot in the classroom.
yeah, yeah.
These were all taught by people with 20 years experience in the classroom. They knew what they were talking about,
That's great.
and it was incredibly useful.
Great.
I, no, between them and Eric Whitney and my own introspection at the end of each class, um, eventually you make fewer and fewer mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I have to ask. You
Yes,
took a major pay cut to go from what you were doing to say it one more time. What you were doing?
I was in building management.
Okay, so yeah, so you took a
I was
major
in,
pay cut from building management to work and teach kids in the Bronx. Did anybody think you were crazy?
well, okay, let me go back to that. Um, when I was a building manager, I worked for these two doctors who had seen that the East Village was going to come to life.
Oh wow,
The East Village back in those days was really rough. It
right.
had not been gentrified. And these two doctors saw that that was going to happen.
Mm,
And they got in and they bought a bunch of buildings with some partners. And my job was to make their buildings work.
wow.
Uh, so that went very well for a while. Then they decided that they were going to outsource the management. And I would go with the new company, but I would have a new boss.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah, I thought it was kind of crazy, but
Yeah.
they own the company, they get to make the rules.
Yeah. Right.
So my new boss was, well, let me back up. The two doctors were both really good people.
Hmm.
One was a psychiatrist, one was a psychologist, and they were really decent people.
Yeah.
The building manager that I went to work for was not.
I see.
There was a time in my third day on the job, this woman had a problem with her toilet, and I went over to look at it, and there was a broken flange, which was way more than I could fix, and it was way more than my handyman could fix.
Yeah.
So I went to the office. This was a Friday night. I called the plumber, and my new boss came over and put his finger on the phone and hung up on me and says, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, we need a plumber." And he said, "It's Friday afternoon. That's triple time for a plumber." And I said, "Yeah, but this woman
Oof.
with two children is got a broken toilet. She can't go the weekend without a toilet." And he said, "Yes, she can."
Oh God. It's
And I said,
terrible.
"Well, yeah." He wouldn't budge. And I said, "I'm sorry, I can't work for you." And I
I
quit.
see. I see.
And the very next day, Bruce called me to ask me if I wanted to work for him.
Wow, what serendipity. So, okay, I have to say, you must have a very strong sense of morality and right and wrong. I mean, because not judging anybody, just up and quitting a job like that without having anything in place is very destabilizing. And next day you don't know what you're going to do for money, etc. And
Yes,
you must have been. Were you in your 30s then or 20s?
I was in my 40s.
Oh, you're in four. Oh, you're in your 40s. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I was in my
Tracking the time is challenging for me, but
yeah, yeah. Okay, well, regarding the morality business,
yeah,
my first major in college was philosophy,
I see.
and ethics was my specialty,
Right.
my area of focus. That was before I switched majors and became a theater major. But I spent 3 years as a philosophy student, and
Right.
ethics was the thing that intrigued me the most. And I also grew up in the South with a Connecticut mother and a New York father, and I was born in Massachusetts. So we were Yankees in Jacksonville, Florida.
I see. Wow.
Uh, Very racist. My
Yeah.
parents would have none of it. My mother would drink out of the colored water fountain.
Wow.
So I grew up with a real sense of what is right and what is wrong, and how you behave and how you treat other
Yeah,
people.
that's smack dab right in the middle of the civil rights movement. So,
Well, that's actually
oh,
pre-civil rights.
pre-civil rights. Wow. Okay.
Yes, yes,
Right.
yes.
Right. No, that makes sense. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I am getting the time scale here. Um,
Well, you weren't there. I was.
right. Good point. Good point. So yeah. So okay. So you definitely have this really good moral background, moral foundation for your life, and an incredible interest in many intellectual subjects. If you're also into ethics,
Yes, yes. Yeah.
um, you know, yeah. I have so many questions. The time period is just amazing. So when you quit your job, it was what year?
Would have been 91, I guess.
Okay, okay. So yeah, okay. So you had worked through all this. Okay, I see. Um, yeah, I'm kind of blown away here. So I'm a little bit lost for words because you just have such a vast array of knowledge and things you've done. Even though we talked about the acting, but even all of these other pursuits you had, they
Hmm.
it seems to me that they add up to someone that can really speak about life and the which chess is just this microcosm. Did you see it that way, or did you even know that your interests and talents that you had were affecting your ability to teach chess or improving it?
Um, when I became a teacher, I did have a strong sense that virtually everything I had done up until then was going to help.
Right.
Yeah, it was all going to come together. Of course, when I was doing all those different things, I had no idea that that's where I was heading.
Right. Of course. Yeah. You can't. It's life. Right. Um,
But
okay. So then, so as you got your feet wet and everything is going well in your classroom, what was the point that you realized, oh, I'm really making a big difference?
um, wow, uh, I think the biggest impact. I mean, I sort of sensed it all along.
Yeah.
That I'm changing things. Um, there were a couple of things. There was one student who had been like a colossal troublemaker in the school, and one day one of the deans came up to me and said, "David, what did you do to?" I'll call him Jose, um, not his real name. And I thought, what did I do to Jose? And I'm trying to think first off, who the hell is Jose?
Right. Right. Right.
And then I'm thinking about her formulation, meaning I've done something bad. It turns out that wasn't where she was going at all.
Right.
She said, I don't know what it is, but since he's been doing chess, he's been on time. He's been paying attention in class. He's just totally transformed.
Yeah.
Now, he was not on the chess team. It didn't even register. that I was having any effect on him.
Yeah.
But here, this dean came up and told me that, um, and there were countless stories like that. There was one boy in a special ed class, and boy, talking about making mistakes. Um, my first class with him was my first year teaching.
Okay.
I come into the class. This is a special ed class, fifth grade, so they should all be 10 or 11. He was probably 12 or 13 and very big. I walk into the class and he's bouncing a basketball. And I said, you got to put that away. He kept bouncing the basketball, so I took it away from him. Then he took out one of these, a tennis ball, and he starts bouncing that. So I took that away. And then he had one of those little red rubber balls, that are attached to an elastic thing on a paddle.
Yeah.
Starts bouncing that, and I'm thinking, God Almighty, what is going on with this kid? First off, where's he getting them?
He's got an infinite supply of balls in his pocket.
Why does he have so many of these things? So I took that away. Needless to say, he made my life miserable for the next 2 weeks.
Right. Right.
I was at a party with a special ed teacher from another school, and I told her about this guy, and she said, "Well, of course he hates you. All you've done is take things away from him."
True. Yeah.
And I thought, oh my God, I wouldn't like me either.
Yeah.
That was a big moment for me. And the next week was the one where I was going to teach the ladder checkmate with the two rooks. And so I, I'm demonstrating how it works, and I'm asking questions, and I'm finished with the lesson, and now it's time for one of them to come up and do it. So I called on this guy. I'm going to call him Jake. I said, Jake, come up here. I bet you can do this. Of course, he had not been paying attention. He had no clue what was going on.
Right. Right.
But I finally got him up there, and I walked him through it slowly, step by step. And he's making mistakes, and I'm helping him, and he's making mistakes, and I'm helping him. And he suddenly realizes that I'm really helping him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not blaming him. I'm not judging him. I'm not criticizing him. I'm trying to get him to understand this process of how these two rooks are going to chase a king to the bottom of the board.
Mm-hmm.
And when he realized that, his shoulders relaxed. He got a little bit of a smile, and he learned how to do it.
Yeah. Wow.
Now, 2 weeks later, where it's lunchtime, he's out in the yard, and I'm watching the kids at lunchtime, and he's got this kid up against the fence. He's holding him by the neck,
Oh
and
man.
he's got his fist pulled back, and he's about to turn this kid's face into hamburger. And I'm 20 yards away,
Oh man.
and all I can do is yell his name. So I yelled out, Jake. And he stopped. He let go of the kid. He turned to face me, put his hands in the air like, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And he just sort of smiled and walked off.
Oh man.
Now, if I hadn't helped him,
True.
if that other teacher hadn't told me what a jerk I was being,
Yeah.
um, who knows what would have happened. So, there are times like that all over the place when you're a teacher that you realize what you're doing is really worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What you're doing really does count. And so you were asking earlier about the trophies and the championships and those things. Yeah, those are wonderful. I won't deny it. Fabulous. Doesn't hold a candle to Jake not punching that kid.
Yeah. Well, what you're getting at here before we move on is the human element, the all the
Yes.
emotions and
Yeah.
the ups and downs of being a coach.
Yes.
Can you talk a
Yes.
little bit more of that? How maybe you dealt with your frustrations? What drove you to keep going? I mean, obviously those moments are a big part of it. But anything specific you can give us?
Well, I think the thing that drove me the most was realizing that these kids need to hear the things that I have to say.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, I'm a really big proponent of ethics, and I like to think that when I'm teaching the children, that we're really working not just on chess ideas, but on what's decent and what's not decent. I mean, one of the things that happens in chess, as you know, is there's cheating.
Yeah.
Um, and, the touch move rule and things like that. There are all kinds of ways to cheat. And in the beginning, my kids were getting subjected to these cheating techniques all the time, and occasionally doing them themselves when they saw what somebody else was able to do. And so I would have big meetings on how you cheat and why you should not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, this is how it's done. If any of you do it, don't ever tell anybody that I'm your coach. And furthermore, you will not be on my team.
Yeah.
That's not what we do.
Right.
So, instilling a sense of ethics, I think, is really, really one of the important things that a chess coach can do.
Yeah.
And the fact that a lot of chess coaches don't spend time on that is why there's so much cheating.
That's right.
And it really bothers me that so many chess coaches don't understand that you're not there to teach the kids how to win chess games. You're there to develop a complete human being.
That's right.
And if they do really well at chess, that's wonderful. But I like to think that none of my students would ever have worked for Enron.
Right.
I think that's one of the great missing things in the chess scene today, is the emphasis on ethics and decency, and respect for the game, respect for the traditions, respect for your opponent, respect for yourself, respect for your team.
Yeah.
I just think that was one of my big motivating
Right.
drives.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you sharing that, and that's very wise words. Okay, this next subject, it seems insignificant compared to what we were just talking about, but how chess is seen in the wider culture is important to the adoption of what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
In
Yes.
schools,
Yes.
getting teachers
Sure.
in schools. If chess is not seen as valuable, then it won't be
Right.
useful at all or
Yes.
you won't be able to get your programs in the schools.
Absolutely.
So there may be people that don't know, but you had a character in a pretty big cult classic portray your efforts in the inner city schools in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that experience in I believe it's called. Well, I'll let you introduce the movie.
The Knights of the South Bronx.
Yeah, in the
movie?
Knights of the South Bronx.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Who played you?
Ted Danson.
Okay, first though, I have
Yes.
to ask, how did you feel having Ted Danson play you?
I thought it was wonderful. He's an amazing man.
Yeah.
We had so much fun working together.
Right.
He is so open and so honest and just so dedicated to doing it the right way.
Right.
He's a great one.
That's excellent. Okay, so tell me a little bit about the story. How did you get involved in the film, and why was what was the story behind all that?
Okay. The backstory on that is that we were featured on CBS and CNN.
Okay.
The CNN piece had a reporter named Perry Peltz. Perry is a phenomenal reporter and a wonderful person. And she was having dinner with a friend of hers, Diane Nabatoff, who was a Hollywood producer. And Diane was saying, I just can't find a good story. And Perry said, "Oh, I've got a good story for you." And she told her about my chess teams in the Bronx. And so Perry called me up and said, "How would you like to meet with Diane?" So we had a breakfast together, and I told her something about what we had done. And she said, "Okay, I'm hooked."
Oh, wow. Awesome.
And then she hired Jamal Joseph, who was a professor at Columbia. And Jamal also was one of the Black Panthers. He was the youngest of the Panthers.
Wow.
And he wrote a book called Baby Panther
Wow.
about his experiences as a Panther. And now I had done a little civil rights stuff. We didn't talk about that one, but we'll leave
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I wanted to meet Jamal, I think, more than he wanted to meet me.
That's excellent.
So Jamal and I got together, and I showed him what I had done and told him how I did it. And we had many, weeks and weeks of meetings. And then he said, now you have to understand something here. We don't have a Cecil B. DeMille budget. Um, we are not going to tell your story of 8 years in the Bronx. We're going to truncate it down into 1 year.
Right.
And I said, well, that's not possible. Nobody can take a fourth grade class, I don't care who they are, and turn them into national champions in 1 year.
Right.
And he said, look, we're not going to tell the historic truth. We are going to tell a truth. And that truth is that somebody went into the South Bronx and taught these children to believe in themselves through chess. Right. That's the story we're going to tell. And I thought they did a fairly good job. I thought they did a great job. I would cavil about a few things. As I was looking at the script, I said, you got to show that the kids work harder. You got to show that they work harder. And so they put more of that stuff in.
Nice.
And then there were some silly things. One of the things that they did on, I think it was the CBS piece, was Bruce Pandolfini came out to help with my kids. And we had this one just wizard who's now an engineer.
Yeah.
With a Columbia degree. A boy named Evan Alvarez. And Bruce is working with him, and they're doing a 4 nights game. And they're like 5 moves into the opening. And Bruce is really intrigued by Evan, because Evan is he's a cut above. So Bruce flips the board over so you can't see the pieces anymore. And he says, okay, so are you attacking anything? And Evan looks up and he says, yes, I'm attacking your bishop. This is and so Bruce went through 3 or 4 moves, and Evan was with him the whole time.
Wow, he's playing blindfold.
Blindfold chess.
Yeah.
Well,
without a blindfold on. Right.
Yeah, but he's doing it in his head.
Yeah, in his head.
So Jamal was intrigued by that, and so he put in this absolutely ridiculous thing of coming in 2 weeks before the tournament, saying, "Okay, no more chessboards." All in our heads.
Right.
Now it's good drama, but no chess person is going to look at this and say, "Oh, come on."
Yeah.
That's not going to happen. Lacks verisimilitude.
Right. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that you have a background in drama as well, so then your skills map onto this movie as well, in a very almost serendipitous way.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was fun, and working with Ted. I mean, he already knew how to play chess.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
The kids did not know how to play chess. I had to teach the children how to play.
Oh wow.
So I taught them, how do you hold the pieces?
Right. Right.
And how do you sit at the board? All those things that we take for granted.
Yeah.
But if you're not a chess player, you're not going to know that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but the movie was, I have to say, it was a really fantastic experience.
Yeah.
And they also gave me a little bit at the end where I got to give out the trophy.
Yeah, right. Little cameo.
Yeah, a little cameo.
Oh, that's nice.
So that was fun.
Yeah. How closely did you work with Ted Danson?
We worked very closely for, I guess, about 6 weeks.
Wow.
And I was talking with him, about how the teaching works and, what it means to be in the classroom with the kids. And he watched me teach the kids in the team and in the show how to play chess.
Yeah.
And at the end of the first hour, he walked away and he said, "I don't know how you do that." He said, "I would have killed them."
And they're just acting.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
But he was just marvelous. Yeah.
Oh wow, that's excellent. Um, and then how did the premiere and the reception go of the film?
Oh, that was great fun. They did the first showing at the FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology, and my mother came up in her wheelchair to be there for the show.
Uh,
It was a wonderful moment,
yeah,
and a lot of the donors who had given money to our program were able to come, because I mean, for kids in the South Bronx, poorest congressional district in the country, for them to be able to fly to San Jose, California, to Phoenix, to Chicago, none of that would have happened without donors.
right, right.
People hadn't given us money, and I couldn't have brought in people like Bruce, and Maurice actually came in once.
Yeah,
A whole bunch of chess masters who would come in on school holidays in our summer programs. All of these things were funded because people gave us money.
right.
If that hadn't happened, nobody would have ever heard of these kids from the Bronx.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, donors really make the world go round.
Yeah,
And if you think about it, if you take that group of people out of civilization, the concert halls don't have nearly as many pieces to play. The
hmm,
museums don't have nearly as much in them. Patronage really is a huge part of the success in anything like this.
yeah, yeah. That makes sense. And I guess that transitions to I think our final topic here because we have to wrap up shortly. I don't want this to
Okay.
go. I mean, we could talk for days probably. There's just so much amazing stuff here. Um, Going forward in the United States, you know, there has been a rise in donors in the last say 10 years with Rex Sinkfield,
Right.
with of course 1000 GM who's producing this film,
Mhm.
the nonprofit that's backing the film, and
Okay.
and they're slowly making their way to get donors, but it does seem like the philanthropic culture in the United States has taken a hit in the past 20, 30 years in general. Um, how can chess itself, as a pursuit and as a educational tool, break through to the public consciousness to actually achieve what we need, the funding that we need?
Well, if I knew that,
Right.
I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
All I can say is that we need to somehow get the word out about what this does for children.
Right.
Um, the beginning of the Manhattan Chess Club School started when a man named Fan Adams came to the Manhattan Chess Club, where Bruce Pandolfini was the president, and said he wanted to do something for chess, for
Mm-hmm.
professional chess.
Mm-hmm.
And his idea was to hold tournaments that would attract uh, and give our budding young masters the chance to become grandmasters,
Yeah.
for the grandmasters to get the experience that they needed to compete at higher levels. Bruce's counter idea was to put chess in the schools, because Capablanca said that chess is an art like painting and sculpture.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I hate to disagree with anyone as brilliant as Capablanca, but that's not true. I don't have to be a painter or a sculptor to appreciate Rembrandt or Rodin.
Right.
I must be a chess player to appreciate chess.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just symbols on
Oh,
a square.
yeah, yeah. So Bruce's idea was, let's build an audience and let's build a talent pool. Let's start in the schools.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact is that works. I mean, my kids in the Bronx played against Hikaru Nakamura when he was in the third grade.
Wow.
They played against Fabiano when he was in the fourth and fifth grade.
Wow. When he was sitting on phone books.
Yeah, 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 and demolishing my students.
Yeah. Yeah. You're demolishing
No, but I
everybody.
mean, yeah, but I mean, they came through the scholastic chess scene in America,
Right.
and a whole lot of others have as well. But what's also I think even more important than developing the monsters is developing the decent people,
Yeah.
the thinking people. One of the things that Sylvia said to us when I was first teaching was our job as teachers, there's nothing to do with chess, but our job as teachers is to produce thinking, caring, and productive adults.
Mm-hmm.
And chess is a fantastic way to do that. And you will also get the stars,
Mm-hmm.
but mainly you'll get a huge body of smart people. And we need to somehow find a way to get that knowledge, that insight, that understanding out to the wider public.
Yeah.
But right now, there's this massive war on education.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot to overcome right now.
Wow.
We're in a really ugly time.
Yeah. A really amazing time for chess, an ugly time for the
Yes,
wider culture.
right.
It's
Yeah,
a giant mixed bag of
it
civilization and
is. It is.
society.
It is. It is. But if we can find a way to break through that nonsense and
Yeah.
focus on what chess can do for children, it's a game changer. I mean, I've seen it over and over and over again. I
Wow.
mean, the kids on my team, um, Evan is an engineer. Um, Leon is an engineer. I could just go on and on and on with how well these people have done.
Yeah.
And these were people, um, by and large, from single parents in the South Bronx.
Yeah.
And chess was the vehicle that made that possible. Now, some of them were going to be fine without it. I have no doubt at all. I mean, they're just amazing people.
Right.
And they would have been like, every once in a while, James Baldwin is going to come out of Harlem.
True. True. Yeah.
But from an actuarial point of view, that's not the way to bet.
Yeah, and you can't take out anything from the take out any of the influences from people's lives once
No,
they're influenced in that way, especially through
yeah,
the ethics and
right.
just basic human decency that you're instilling in your
Yes,
classes.
yes, yes. But I think if we can get the word out that chess does these things, um, great things can happen. I mean, I've just seen it over and over and over again.
That's profound. We have to wrap up, but
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
thank you for joining me, David.
My
And
pleasure.
I hope we can speak again in the future because you have a lot of wisdom to instill and share with us. And
Well, you can call me anytime.
all right, thanks.